Talkopolis, the social media TV network for your city. Talkopolis programming is sponsored by the following. Highland Hills, a multicultural, diversified funeral home supporting the entire Davidson County community. Visit our website at www.highlandhillsfuneralhome.com or call us at 615-650-5555.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another episode of Player to Player. Derrick Mason is not in today, so we're going to go down south, way down south, and bring in Kane Harrison from Talkopolis.com. Kane, you're going to be doing your best to be a Derrick Mason today.
I'm certainly not as charming or as good looking as the big man himself, but it's a pleasure to be here.
You hold your own.
Thank you, sir.
So are you ready to talk a little bit of sports today?
Let's talk sports. I mean, we're going to talk about, I guess, Michael Oher. We're going to talk a bit college basketball. We're going to talk some NASCAR, so I'm excited.
Yeah, especially while starting off with the Tennessee Titans conversation. Michael Oher is a free agent right tackle that we got from the Baltimore Ravens. He is now part of the team to fill in for David Stewart, who had an injury-riddled season last year. He's supposed to come in and do some good things to at least help Chance Warmack, who's the right guard, our first pick last year, help him make a transition. So we'll see how that thing kind of plays out. Some other news that we were talking about with the Tennessee Titans came. They also bring in Charlie Whitehurst, and they released Ryan Fitzpatrick, who used to back up Jake Locker last year. So a lot of changes over there. Ken Wisenhunt kind of wants people that he's familiar with, which is probably the reason why that he brought in Charlie Whitehurst, a guy that can maybe help be a mentor, if you will, for Jake Locker. Because Jake Locker did actually a pretty good job when Matt Hasselbeck was here, who has now moved on to the Colts, as being a mentor. So that kind of give him an anchor, if you will, a little bit.
Well, like Michael Oher, I guess, from my perspective, not being a massive fan of American football, but know him obviously from the blind side internationally. He was like thrown onto the scene for people outside of the American community. But let me get this right tackle, you were left tackle, correct?
That is correct.
So you've got a feel for, I guess, what age were you? He's 27 now, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so he's a big boy, 320 or something like that. How's he going to fit into this Titans side?
Well, this is the thing. He has left tackle feet, Kane. And what that means is usually guys that play the quote-unquote blind side, which is the reason for the movie, you have your athletic blockers block the side that the quarterback has his back to, which is the left side.
Right.
But in this instance, obviously Michael Roos has been the incumbent at that position, pretty good Pro Bowler. David Stewart is a right tackle. Now, usually, Kane, right tackles are ground pounders. They've got heavy feet, and they usually lead the charge in run blocking. But in this instance, Michael Oher is more of a left tackle that's playing right tackle. So he's got to make a little bit of an adjustment, not necessarily playing right tackle, but being used in the capacity that the Titans are used to using him, and Ken Wisenhunt will be using him, and that's to really run the football effectively.
Well, let's think about this. I mean, so the Titans obviously haven't had a lot of success in recent years.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great name. It's great for us to have him in the Nashville community and all those different things. Like a $20 million contract, I think that this contract he signed was. But is he going to bring something to the Titans, or is this just kind of another Titans grab? It just seems to me that there's these news headlines that sound fantastic, but don't ever translate into wins.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what the fan base here is tired of. They're tired of mediocre seasons. They're tired of mediocre free agency picks. They're tired of mediocre draft picks. So when you bring in a guy like Michael Oher, I guess the one thing that's alluring about him is that people know him. They're familiar with him. But what's he going to be like when he gets on the football field? We've talked to a number of guys over the past couple of days, Kane, that are from the Baltimore area that say he's how to be nice. I can't say work in progress because he's not a young guy.
Right.
But he might be missing the mark if, in other words, a healthy David Stewart were available. You definitely want him to be on that line. Maybe there's some challenges coming up front for him making an adjustment. Maybe this opportunity coming down here to Tennessee to take the next step will be a good welcome opportunity for him. I don't know. We'll see.
I guess it's hard for the Titans because they have to be on point and seem to be doing something. I guess if they went completely the other way and didn't spend a lot of money but got some youth in it and then allowed a building process.
Yeah.
But they can't. I mean, it seems to me for 10 years they've kind of been trying to build, but just haven't found that key line success.
Yeah, well, I think what happens is over the past few seasons, we've seen so much volatility, even in the front office ranks. We've seen the passing of owner Bud Adams kind of obviously develop other changes that have culminated in Ken Wisenhunt being here. We've had draft picks that were drafted at quarterback that didn't make it here. there's so many other factors that have come into play as far as them not necessarily being a contender.
Sure.
And the reason I think is because of, we talk about attrition, we talk about the volatility in the coaching ranks, but for the most part, they haven't had a solid staple of people that you can say would be people to follow with the franchise. So I think that those are some of the difficulties that they're going to contend with. But it'll be okay. Because what we've seen them do in free agency so far, Kane, is spend some money, which is something the Tennessee Titans aren't normally used to doing.
Right.
They went up and they've secured field position by bringing in a Dexter McCluster, who's going to be a phenomenal special teams piece as well as a receiver. And also they've given Leon Washington another phenomenal returner, a one-year deal. So you're going to get the ball in some good comfortable situations and positions. Hopefully that offense will click with a healthy Jake Locker. So we're going to transition on a little bit, talking about some football. We're going to switch over to the Selection Sunday. Now, yesterday, NCAA ranked, some people might say this is like almost a precursor to Christmas when you try, for these teams that, bubble teams, mid-major teams, teams that are just like, the ones that won their conference championship. Some of them can't even have below 500 records, and they find themselves tourney seeds today. So, it's a lot of conversation going on about Wichita State, the only undefeated, well, I don't think they're the only undefeated team, but they are an undefeated team, number one Midwest Regional, Virginia, Arizona, as well as, of course, Florida, round out your other top seeds, Florida being the number one overall seed. But, man, do you follow basketball a lot down in Australia?
Basketball's not big in Australia. I mean, we get a lot of the national type things. One thing I noticed when I moved here, first and foremost, is the level of college sports. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So college basketball, college football.
Yeah.
To an international, someone who's international, I mean, we just don't hear about that, which is phenomenal. And then you come into the country, and college is like the biggest thing going on.
Well, let me ask you something. We'll segue for just 1 second, because I did hear that opening day for some baseball teams, a couple of baseball teams in the Major League Baseball, is going to be played down in Australia. Now, I want you to talk about the time change. Is it feasible for two baseball teams in a regular schedule, okay? Now, of course, they're going to give them a little bit, a leeway here and there to allow them to adjust getting down there and coming back. But just talk about how your body has to adjust going to the southern hemisphere of the planet.
Well, I can tell you a couple of things. I mean, I know from playing football in Australia, so the different kind of football, but Aussie rules football. Even just the travel, even just, someone playing a Sunday game and then having to turn up on the Saturday or something like that in the next week is, with professional athletes especially, and their diets and all that sort of stuff, it can be very detrimental to how that side performs. So it is going to be a massive problem, there's no doubt about it. I've traveled something like 16 or 17 times back and forth from Australia to America, and you literally lose a day. So your body just does not know what's happening. I'm sure that they'll try and prepare these players for this sort of thing, but it'll be very interesting. I think it'll be great for the sport, obviously, to get to another place, and that's probably the primary thing. But if it affects them consequently on their season here, then it would be detrimental to the team, no doubt.
You can definitely see where Major League Baseball wants to expand into other areas. They're well into Mexico. There's some presence in Tokyo. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of Japanese players come over and do well in the Major League. But you can see them wanting to kind of copycat the NBA, the NFL, and being an international brand. I just kind of wonder how it will play off. I can't say why Australia, because obviously you're Australian.
Yeah.
But what's the market to the eighth continent on the planet?
I mean, the thing is, baseball is reasonably well followed in Australia, and we do have an Australian baseball league. The other thing that happens, yeah, we do. And the other thing that happens that I guess Americans may not be aware of is that sure, there's an influx of people that come here to try and make it in the major sports, but if you're a college basketballer, anything like that, football player, all that sort of stuff. I mean, these people start to look to where can I play, and so they go to places like Australia to play basketball in our national league. Definitely, it's a step down, but they still get to make some money, live in a beautiful place, see some pretty women, and have some fun. So I mean, it's the truth.
That's a great way that you segue back into basketball. We were talking about the NCAA and
so tell me about this. I've heard this all over the news. So is this what? Is it Jimmy Buffett who's offering $1 billion or whatever? Warren, whoever it is.
Yeah.
He wants
Jimmy Buffett might be offering a margarita or two.
Right, that's fine. But I mean, so it must be, I'm just looking at this thing, if you're going to put $1 billion on the table, obviously to pick how this whole thing transpires must be incredibly difficult.
I think that the number I saw was almost 900 trillion different combinations that you could put together in an NCAA bracket, which is obviously ridiculous.
Why is it so difficult? I mean, what is it just?
I mean, well, think about it. You've got a field of, I can't even sure what the field is, 95, 96 teams? I can't remember what the field is. And as it dwindles down, you being able to precisely pick every single winner in each bracket.
Right.
I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. So that's why the odds are so high, and the purse being so high to come along with that. But, with that, there comes equations. Can mid-major teams that have never lost a game beat teams that are in major conferences that may have had 1 or 2 losses? Because of what? Strength of schedule. That seems to be what we're talking about here. So you have a team like the Wichita State Shockers that haven't lost a game, have been in the Final Four in this situation before, but they're not a major conference team that usually plays against the Michigans and the Floridas and the Stanfords who finally got it in this year. So that leads to the conversation of, geez, are some of these guys maybe stealing some seats? Like,
Right.
Would you not have given some teams a higher seed, or possibly even let some teams that are now dancing in the NIT, would you have not wanted to give them an NCAA bid more so than a team that just simply won their conference?
But don't you think it's a great opportunity, I guess, on the other way for individual players to showcase themselves against the strengths? I mean,
Yeah.
where else do they get to do that?
Well, that in itself is a good argument, because you as an individual, you want to see how you match up against
Right.
the top talent. But this is also the part where dreams are made. You always want to stick an underdog in there, so that way the fans can, those ones that
Everyone
don't like
loves a
watching.
story.
Yeah, the ones that really kind of like to study things and don't just jump on the quote unquote bandwagon. They look for guys that they want to see get to the top, and that's where the Butlers come into play. And Gonzaga back in the day, before they started being at least a conversation piece in the NCAA. That's what happens with those guys. Teams really want to see them do well.
Yeah.
Well,
And
not
I tell you
teams per se, but their
someone
fans
who
do.
everyone's wanted to see do well is Dale Earnhardt Jr. So let's talk a little bit about Nascar, because he had his first win, I guess, in the Daytona 500, and then now has come second podium places in the last 2 events.
Until this weekend.
Yeah. So, but the other thing that I found incredibly interesting was NASCAR have said what a great, fantastic start to the season, but there aren't as many people watching NASCAR. The ratings have actually dropped off from NASCAR.
Usually it's drama that gets the attention back to, like, they love seeing when Kurt Busch ticks somebody off.
Right.
They love seeing when drivers, get into it, when Carl Edwards has issue with somebody. Not saying that Carl Edwards is an aggressive driver, but just like, they love the controversy, because these guys are working such a closely knit group. They all live, I think, like within 10 miles, 20 miles of each other in Charlotte, when they get on the road to start a Sprint Cup tour championship. But, they help each other when need be. They hate each other when need be. That's such a unique atmosphere as far as being in a NASCAR pit crew.
Sure.
Because it's not like when you're playing for the Tennessee Titans, you have such a connection with the Indianapolis Colts, or you hang out with a regular basis with the Houston Texans. I mean, we have friends that play for other teams and things of that nature. But when you look at how they work together, hand in hand, in pit row, there's a relationship there that's different in that sport. Now, talking about Dale Earnhardt Jr. specifically, here's a guy that first off kicked off the season with a win at Daytona, which is great, because people kept talking about I can't remember the guy's name that started racing for RDR Racing. He's the one that actually won the race rather than the predicted guy, which started the domino effect, him finishing second in the last 2 races. This 24th place finish in the Bristol race, a little bit different. It's an oval track, half mile, a little more aggressive driving. There are a host of #1 drivers that didn't even finish in the top 10. Jimmy Johnson didn't even finish in the top 10.
Right.
So with that, you get that. Carl Edwards wins this race, under a little bit of controversy, under caution flag, but still, hey, a win's a win, right?
Well, I know that obviously we love social media here, because this is how you're probably watching us right now. And just to get back to the whole ratings thing, they talked on NASCAR, and they were saying that with Dale Earnhardt Jr. doing so well, finally in a season so far, social media has blown through the roof. And so there has been a decline in TV. It's actually, for the Daytona, it was down 43%, which is incredible. I mean, that's almost half. You'd have panic stations, I think. But then it's been 5% down since. So, and it's stayed down. But they've said the increase in social media. So, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. is one of the most followed people in social media. He actually started a Twitter account just after he won the race, and he had like 500,000 followers within like 4 days. So it's a new movement, and I think NASCAR are really excited about the way it's moving forward.
Dale Jr. has been the most popular driver on tour for years. And he's always been the proverbial bridesmaid.
Right.
A guy that's it's high in the standings, doesn't win a lot of races, but when the points come down to it, boy, he's always amongst the conversation. This year, starting off like he's done, the winner of the first race, top two finishes in the next 2 races. That kind of links the two, the most popular driver doing well. So people are going to definitely tune in and pay attention. And as this career, or excuse me, as this season progresses for him, it's going to be even more conversation, especially if he has ups and downs.
Sure.
Ups and downs. You know, he wins a handful of races, loses a handful of races, wins a handful of races. That's going to keep people in tune, you know. Or if he just flat out not wins, because people want to see, could this be the year that Dale Earnhardt Jr. brings home a Sprint Cup championship? That would be pretty impressive for him.
Well, I mean, as you know, in your football career, had such great success and were able to go to the Super Bowl as well, which so many people just don't even get to do that or manage it. But it would be terrible to finish such a fantastic career and just have been the most popular person. I mean, he doesn't go out there to be the most popular person. He goes out there to win, yes or no?
You're right. And very rarely do you see the popularity and performance equation match up.
Right.
There is one other person, in my opinion, that when he said that he was going to retire, he drew pretty much the attention of the entire baseball community, and that's Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter is a guy that almost transcends the barriers when it comes to, you know, your favorite players and teams. You might be a Dodgers fan. You could be a Mariners fan. If Derek Jeter were standing in front of you, he would command every ounce of your attention because he's a player that doesn't really deal in much controversy. He's not someone that's ever had a lot of ire from the fans or even the people he's played with or against. So even in Boston, they're going to be cheering when he does his final, maybe he gets a home run or something as he's approaching the home plate. I guarantee you there are going to be some people that are going, that's Derek Jeter, that's Derek Jeter.
Respected by all.
Yeah, respected by all. But,
that's a good one.
One other quick note before we kind of wrap this deal up here. Jim Irsay got himself in a little bit of trouble. The owner for the Indianapolis Colts got pulled over for driving under the influence. Now, this is a story in that we were talking about this on some other shows. How does he get fined? He owns the team.
That makes a good point. It is a good point.
Some people were saying that maybe he should levy a fine to himself and maybe make a charitable donation, to some sort of foundation or something that in the community there in Indianapolis could benefit from his mistakes, if you will. But let me ask you this. How much do you fine a billionaire?
You're exactly right. I think he has to lead by example, though, and just show. I mean, he obviously would have the foot in the mouth just a little bit right now. But I think it's always been incredibly controversial, the fact that criminal law, so to speak, and then the law that's, be it NFL or be it whatever it might be, then the owner or whoever demands that someone pays a fine. I've always found that to be a really blurry line. Perhaps you have a differing opinion.
Well, it's a punishment. Even in criminal circumstances, even though you do have jail time, there's a financial punishment to it too. You're not just sitting in there doing nothing.
Sure, no doubt. Yeah. But if you were, an employee of Sirius XM, and all of a sudden you got a drink driving fine, and you turned up, and they said, "Listen, we're also going to fine you $5,000." You go, "Hang on a minute, mate. That's not how this works. You don't get to fine me as an employer." It seems like sport is the only thing where you can really do that and get away with it.
And that's because part of the punishment is us, the public, knowing that you've been punished for doing something wrong. If they reported every time someone got a DUI, there wouldn't be programming. You just have constant reports of people getting DUIs.
So really in that aspect, someone like a Justin Bieber should be fined by his record label for being a dick all the time. Is that the kind of premise we're on here?
Can you fine someone for getting on your nerves?
You know what I'm saying? Like,
you have to give all this money back, right?
Exactly. Maybe we start taking some back. It just has always been weird to me. I think that, sport, we do hold these people in such high esteem, and I understand that they...
But let me ask you this though, Kane. Whose fault is that? Is it the athlete's fault, or those of us that give them the ammunition?
Look, I think it's both. It's a balancing line, because there are some athletes who just want to cross the line and go about their business and do that extremely well, and then there's others who want the celebrity that comes with that. And I think that so it is a difficult situation.
But you see how entertainers, athletes, people in the spotlight act when they're on the bad side of the public. Or when they're on the good side of the public. When you are loved and adored by your fans, that's the one thing I think, other than money, compensation, that those people seek. But when you're on the bad side of that, man, that spotlight can be hot.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, that's part of the punishment, being publicly ridiculed.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Well,
I completely understand it. Don't worry about that.
You think that's going to wrap it up for us this week?
Let's wrap it up, buddy.
For Kane Harrison, I'm Brad Hopkins. This has been another episode of Player to Player. Tune in next week. Derrick Mason should return, and if he doesn't, we'll get the Clippers out for old Kane here. We'll see you next week.
See you guys.